Dobar dan i dobrodošli na konferenciju povodom promocije knjige kanadske autorke Irshad Manji. Danas, tokom celog dana, imat ćemo razne događaje i aktivnosti kojima ćemo promovisati knjigu ove poznate kanadske autorke. Ovaj projekat koji predstavljamo danas je nastao u saradnji Helsinškog odbora i organizacije Gariwo, koja za svoj cilj ima promociju građanske hrabrosti i moralne vrline. Ja ispred Helsinškog odbora želim da izrazim veliko zadovoljstvo što smo imamo tu čast da ugostimo Irshad Manji ovde kod nas u Beogradu i što će publika u Srbiji imati priliku da lično razgovara sa autorkom i da sazna o pojedinim temama islama u 21. veku i reformskih tokova koji su aktuelni povodom njegovog suživota u današnjem svetu, imate prilike da čuju i kod nas. Sa nama su ovde autorka Irshad Manji i predsednica organizacije Gariwo iz Sarajeva, Svetlana Broz. Ja bih dao Svetlani reč. Hvala.
Dobar dan svima. Ja želim samo ukratko da kažem da mi je veliko zadovoljstvo što danas u svom rodnom gradu mogu da predstavim knjigu koja je 15. po redu knjiga objavljena u ediciji Pitanje svih pitanja nevladine organizacije Gariwo iz Sarajeva. 15. knjiga koja se bavi temom građanske, odnosno moralne hrabrosti, jer su to sinonimi. Dakle, mi se već više od 10 godina bavimo edukacijom mladih i građana Zapadnog Balkana o građanskoj hrabrosti i u okviru različitih aktivnosti i edukacionih programa imamo izdavačku delatnost, jer smatramo da je bitno građanima regije Zapadnog Balkana približiti na njihovim jezicima ovu važnu temu. Jako mi je drago što sam u prilici da danas pozdravim profesoricu Irshad Manji. Ona je profesorica na New York University u New Yorku, a na kojem vodi i projekt Moral Courage, dakle projekt moralne hrabrosti. Radimo zapravo iste stvari, samo što mi to u našem svetovnom angažmanu nazivamo građanskom hrabrošću, a ona, obzirom da se bavi jednom velikom i širokom temom, a to je i religijom, a to je islam, naziva to moralnom hrabrošću. Obe smo saglasne da su u pitanju sinonimi. Profesorica Manji je objavila pre ove knjige svoju prvu knjigu pre 10 godina koja se zove The Trouble with Islam Today, dakle nevolje sa islamom danas, u mom slobodnom prevodu jer nije prevedena na naše jezike. Ta knjiga joj je donela svetsku slavu, ta knjiga je objavljena na 30 jezika, preko 3 miliona puta je downloadirana sa interneta na arapskom i drugim jezicima u zemljama u kojima čitaoci nikada do sada ne bi bili u prilici da vide tvrdo štampanu tu knjigu, obzirom na režime kojima se ne dopada ideja bilo kakve reforme u islamu. Moram reći samo kratko, pre nego što damo reč naravno autorici, zbog koje smo danas ovde svi, da je knjiga daleko širih i pogleda i poruka od samog islama. I ja vam toplo preporučujem da je na taj način i čitate. Ona je zapravo, ima jednu univerzalnu poruku koja je adresirana i muslimanima, vernicima i vernicima drugih veroispovesti širom sveta, a takođe i agnosticima i ateistima. Svi možemo u njoj naći ono što je bitno, a to je poruka o moralnoj hrabrosti ili građanskoj hrabrosti, o našoj mogućnosti izbora, hoćemo li učestvovati u sopstvenom životu ili ćemo biti samo nemi posmatrači svojih života koje kreira neko drugi u bilo koje vrsti zajednice, od porodice preko društvene zajednice do religijskih zajednica. Ja bih sada naravno dala reč autorici. Hvala.
Well, good afternoon, everybody. I am actually very excited to be here in Belgrade. My first time. I'm overwhelmed a little bit already by the energy of the city. And I look forward to engaging with more energy when it's time for you to ask your questions and perhaps other conversations throughout the day. I want to affirm Dr. Braz's point that Allah, liberty, and love has lessons in it that are universal, that go well beyond Islam or Muslims. In fact, one of the statements made yesterday by an ambassador who came to our event in Croatia, he said, if we don't understand that Allah, liberty, and love is about all of us, then we don't understand very much. And in a nutshell, he really captured what I'm trying to do with this book. As many of you know, I'm a faithful Muslim who speaks from within the fold of Islam. And precisely because I love my faith as much as I do, I feel it's necessary to speak up about the need for democratic reform within the way Islam is being practiced. My journey to this conclusion began many years ago. I was born in Uganda, in East Africa, and in 1972, when I was only 4 years old, the military dictator, General Idi Amin, expelled hundreds of thousands of families simply because we had the wrong color of skin. We were not black enough for Idi Amin. We were never white enough for the British, but we were, for 3 generations, my family, citizens of Uganda. And during the decolonization process in Africa, the idea of independence became distorted into a feverish ideology. And this ideology of Pan-Africanism, which translated into the slogan, Africa only for the blacks, a form of racial purity that meant my family, citizens of this country of Uganda, were no longer allowed to live there. And that is how we wound up as refugees in Canada. And so, at a very young age, though I wasn't able to put language on this when I was just a child, over many, many years of thinking about pluralism, about democracy, about human rights, I realized that there are many lessons I think all of us can be learning and writing about from this kind of an episode in Uganda. And these are lessons, not surprisingly, that apply to this region too. The first lesson that I took is that victims of oppression can easily become oppressors themselves. Just as the black elites in many parts of Africa became after decolonization. They were once victims of colonization. They became oppressors very quickly after that. The second point is that one of the reasons Idi Amin could get away with his racial purity campaign was that he did not have challenges from black citizens of Uganda. People were bystanders. They did not challenge, they did not ask questions, at least not out loud. And so he could claim that he had, quote, popular support. And this is such an important point. It's why Svetlana Broz does what she does and I do what I do. It's that without civil courage, without moral courage among ordinary citizens, leaders become what I would say in English, misleaders. They mislead the people into adopting a manipulative and narrow agenda in the name of democracy. And you would think that in the 21st century, in the digital age economy and world that we now live, that we would be smarter than this. But there is something in our human nature that no matter what kind of formal education we seem to get at universities, for example, that somehow too many of us still fall for these political tricks. And this is why we focus our work on younger people. And we do it in a way, we think and we hope, that is not just historical, not just psychological, not just sociological, but very interdisciplinary, and that really poses ethical questions to young people, so that the cycle of violence and retribution of the violence can finally be broken. I have, over the years that I have been thinking about my own experiences as a refugee, I think that the third lesson that this experience taught me is the one that I brought to understanding what's happening in my own faith of Islam today. And that third lesson is authority can be legitimate. Great teachers have authority. Wonderful parents have authority. But authoritarianism, which is the abuse of authority, is never legitimate. And that experience at such a young age helped me open my eyes to the sorts of lies that I, as a student, was being told at the madrasa, at the religious school where I was growing up in Canada. Lies such as Muslims cannot take Jews and Christians as friends. It didn't jive, it didn't square with my experience at the public school. And when I asked, why can't we take Jews and Christians as friends, I was told, no questions allowed. And at the age of 14, I was told, either you believe or you get out, and if you get out forever. And I got out. I made that choice. I chose not to believe lies. But as I had to explain to my embarrassed mother many times, just because I left the madrasa does not mean I have left Allah. And in fact, over the next 20 years, I took time to study Islam on my own, without my teacher's prejudices infecting the interpretation. And this is the time that I learned Islam has its own tradition of independent thinking. It's called ijtihad. Ijtihad. And I realize that this word sounds very frighteningly like jihad to many non-Arab ears. I will truthfully tell you it comes from the same root as jihad. Jihad means to struggle. Ijtihad means to struggle with your mind, and only your mind, to comprehend a very complex world that has been given to us. And so, over my adult life, I have been exercising Islam's tradition of ijtihad in order to ask uncomfortable questions. But not just quietly to myself, because then it would be useless to my wider community. I've been asking these questions out loud. And it was after my previous book was published, The Trouble with Islam Today, that I realized that there is a sort of a paradigm, an understanding of this kind of duty, that scholars have actually put words to this kind of courage. Dr. Braz rightly calls it civil courage in the context of this region. Robert F. Kennedy called it moral courage. The willingness to speak truth to the powerful in your community and to speak that truth for a greater good. A good that is greater than just for your community. Human rights, critical thinking, education instead of indoctrination. And this is what I now teach at New York University. Using this paradigm of civil courage, of moral courage, over the last 10 years, I've had the most fascinating conversations with young Muslims around the world. And because these issues affect all of us, also with many non-Muslims. And what I have learned is that a new generation desperately wants to reconcile faith and freedom. That there should not have to be one or the other. That's a false choice. You can make that choice, but there's a third choice, which is a faith that allows for questions, and in fact encourages questions. And this is the distinction that I have made in the book for a new generation of readers, and it's the distinction between faith and dogma. Faith, it seems to me, is secure enough to handle questions. Faith is never threatened by questions. But dogma of any kind, religious, nationalist, feminist, capitalist, dogma of any kind is always threatened by questions, because dogma is fragile and it breaks apart, it snaps whenever there is public scrutiny. So it is a citizen's duty. It is a human being's duty, regardless of the labels that he or she has adopted. It is a duty to ask questions in order to live with truth. And in any part of the world that is emerging from war, in any part of the world that calls itself democratic, as my country of Canada does, it is not just a right to ask questions out loud, but in fact, a responsibility. And so whether you're secular or religious, believer or atheist, or somewhere in between, Allah, liberty, and love is about all of us. And I'm so grateful to Gariwo, to Svetlana Braz, for recognizing this and linking arms, these arms, not other kinds of arms, these arms, to move the notion of civil courage forward. And with that, I would be very pleased to take your questions.
You didn't say anything about how your books, as a matter of fact, are accepted in the Islamic world. Did you have any problems?
Okay, it's already simultaneously Dr. Braz actually alluded to that a few minutes ago when she pointed out that my previous book, The Trouble with Islam Today, has been translated into Arabic, Urdu, which is spoken in Pakistan, and Farsi, which is spoken in Iran. And because it is banned, censored by many of the governments that are part of that region, it was young Muslims from the Middle East who advised me, put these translations on the internet. Let us download them, and then let us share them freely with our friends. And in just over 5 years of doing that, we've had more than 3 million downloads. And that's, sir, I will add, that's just the downloads. What I've come to realize, and I didn't think about until I learned this was happening, is that once downloaded, this 200-plus page document is also photocopied and then circulated physically. So using, again, new media and old technology and the very human thing of what we call sweat equity, as underground movements have done for so many generations, spreading the word. Now, this is not to say, of course, that there is no resistance to these ideas. My God, is there ever? I don't mind pointing out that I get death threats quite regularly. You will, if we can make it work, you will soon see just a 2-minute video of something that happened in Amsterdam, a haven of human rights, only 4 months ago when I was launching this book there. And it will show you not just what the barriers are to getting this kind of a message across, but I'm happy to say, this is why I'm crossing my fingers we can show this, there is also a very good news story in this little video that we want to show you, which ultimately is the reason I believe the kind of work that we are doing is making a difference and must be pushed further. You'll see what I mean when we show the video.
To samo 2 minuta, ali mislim da je vrlo impresivno i pokazuje to.
You are talking loud.
The Prophet sallallahu alayhi wa sallam.
Allahu Akbar. Allahu Akbar. Allahu Akbar. Allahu Akbar. Allahu Akbar.
How dare you? Speak in the name of Allah and the messenger. You can't be coming up to a radio show. Speaking for Islam. Like a free show. You sick person. How dare you speak in the name of Islam? You munafir. You kuffar. You murtad. You murtad. You murtad. إذا جاءك المنافقون قالوا نشهد إنك لرسول الله والله يعلم إنك لرسوله والله يعلم إن المنافقين لكاذبون محمد رسول الله لا إله إلا الله لا إله إلا الله
as I mentioned, this happened 4 months ago, so very recently. It was the launch of this book in Amsterdam. I expected, as there always is, a vibrant conversation. I did not expect a violent confrontation. These religious extremists stormed into the middle of the event, and I didn't know what to do. I pointed to the word love and told them, we love you, all of us, we love you anyway. And some of them were confused why we weren't retaliating in the way that they expected or running. But they were there for a full hour. That's why, proportionately, this video, a minute and a half, had to show the kinds of things that they were saying. Takfir, takfir, which means you are kafir. And in their Wahhabi interpretation, this is not just a threat. This is an order to execute. What I found absolutely fascinating and wonderful about that night was you saw my guests who were there for the book launch did not run away. They had the chance on more than a few moments in that full hour. 2 big doors. The doors were open for most of that hour. Anybody could have left. Instead, most of them came to the front and organically began to create a shield, a human shield, around me and my Muslim co-host that night. And they just stood. They stood together. In this case, literally, not just metaphorically. They stood together for pluralism. The ultimate lesson, I think, of this experience is that people do have choices. You know, Viktor Frankl, one of my favorite authors, in his book, Man's Search for Meaning, pointed out there are so many things in our lives, politically and as well as personally, that we can't control, but we can always control how we respond to what happens, and in that way affect the outcome. These guys, a week later, put up their propaganda video from that night. They didn't get any video of us running away or us trembling. So unlike every single one of their other videos, they focused only on what they were shouting, not on our reaction. This says something. They didn't get what they wanted. And in the thousands of times that now it's been viewed on the internet, it is very heartening how many people on Twitter, on Facebook, have said, I don't know what I would have done in that moment if I was one of your guests, but I do now realize what was possible. And that is the possibility of choice.
Ima pitanja, izvolite.
Ja sam Filip Mladenović, Radio Beograd. Pre svega da poželim dobrodošlicu našoj dragoj gošći iz Kanade. I kad se već pomenuli vašeg omiljenog književnika, pomenut ću ja par svojih omiljenih književnika, pre svega Borgesa, koji je umeo da kaže kako bi želeo da živi u jednoj zemlji gde ne bi bilo ni carina, ni uniformi, ni zastava, ni kasarni, ni crkava. Zatim pomenuo bih Paula Ostera, čuvenog američkog književnika, koji je u jednom intervjuu rekao, kaže, što se tiče svih religija, ja imam rezerve prema njima. Bojim se onoga što su sve te velike religije počinile. Suština religije ima nešto pozitivno, ali je u praksi ona perverzna. I pitanje glasi, mene je preporodila knjiga Christophera Hitchensa Bog nije veliki. Kada se ta knjiga pojavila pre 4-5 godina ovdje u Srbiji u prevodu, ja sam bio fasciniran što se jedan autor usudio da tako temeljito, tako argumentovano iskaže stav koji ja mislim od svog rođenja, odnosno kada sam stasao kao mlad gimnazijalac, da su sve religije zle i da su te religije i nacionalne razlike uzroci svih zala u istoriji čovečanstva. To je pitanje. Dakle, vidim, niste naveli tu knjigu u popisu literature koju ste koristili za ovu knjigu poslednju. Dakle, da li ste tu knjigu pročitali i šta mislite o toj knjizi?
No, I have not read those books, but if at your recommendation, I most certainly will. By the way, I'm always updating the curriculum of my course. So maybe one or more of these books will make it into the curriculum itself. So there's a practical reason to read it too. But I want to democratically disagree with your assertion that religion is the source of all evil. It is the source of much harm that has been done in this world. But I happen to believe that if we did not have religion, we would commit atrocities in the name of some other kind of ideology or difference. You know, when the new atheists, Dawkins, Hitchens, Harris, are confronted with the fact that in the 20th century, many more people were wiped out by so-called secular ideologies than by religious ideologies. They say, they have nothing to say to that. And I'm saying that that doesn't make religion good. It's what we do in the name of religion that matters, not whether we have religion. By the way, I would say the same about technology. Look at how this message of moral courage has been downloaded 3 million times in just a few countries. Now, violent jihadis of the kind we just saw, they are very savvy, very clever in how they use technology. Do we say the internet is evil because of how these guys use it? Do we say the internet is awesome because, you know, a few million readers have downloaded the book from it? Technology is what we make of it. I would argue the same is the case with religion. Within the Quran, there are many passages supporting freedom of conscience, freedom of expression, freedom of thought. And there are many ugly passages. I know which ones I choose to focus on for the sake of a pluralistic faith. And I'll add one final thing to all of this. When you read the new book, you'll see that I draw many lessons from the work of icons such as Martin Luther King Jr. He could not have mobilized tens of thousands of African Americans to get out of their, what he called their nobodiness, their state of believing that they are just nobody. He could not have got them out of that state without invoking God, without invoking the teachings of Christ. The peace accord between Egypt and Israel, when Jimmy Carter was president, he brokered that peace. And he made the statement that neither Anwar Sadat nor Menachem Begin would have come to the place of reconciliation without relying on their religious values. I am not arguing that one needs God to be good. Clearly, you don't need God to be good. God bless you. That's great. And I'm all for having you as part of my community of people who uphold civil courage. But many people do need God. They do need a higher sort of purpose. And our challenge, for the sake of pluralism, is to offer reinterpretations of the various faiths, most urgently my faith of Islam, because this is where dissidents still must worry for their lives. It is our responsibility and our opportunity to advocate these kinds of reforms, knowing that there will be backlash along the way.
Hvala, mi bismo morali sad da završimo ovu konferenciju za medije. Ja vam se zahvaljujem na vašem dolasku i da vas obavestim da će sad u 2 Irshad Manji održati predavanje na Fakultetu za medije i komunikaciju, a da je u 7:30 večeras u Centru za kulturnu dekontaminaciju Promocija knjige. Hvala vam, prijatno.